Subscribe to Crimson Heirs for family revenge stories and family drama stories told with steel and heart. Tap the bell, drop "I'm in" the comments, and stay. Tonight's story begins under a chandelier where applause is bright, but the truth is heavier. Keep listening. This one cuts fast, and it doesn't miss. Under the crystal glare of the Plaza's Grand Ballroom in New York, 2023, a stranger moved through tuxedos and perfume like a knife through satin. He stopped beside Evan Mercer, tilted a thick white envelope into his palm, and leaned close. "It's time to tell them who you really are." Then he was gone, absorbed by mirrors and light. The room sweated elegance. A string quartet skimmed a waltz. Ice chimed in highball glasses. Gold letters on seating cards marched in perfect rows, except for the card that shoved Evan to the last table by the service doors. From there, he could see everything, and almost no one could see him. At the dais, Richard Mercer worked the microphone as if it were already notarized. His cufflinks flashed like signatures. Elaine hovered 2 steps back, patting invisible lint from Grant's lapel, checking angles, polishing smiles. Grant stood in firstborn posture, collecting nods the way a banker collects interest. The night's rumor needed no press release. Mercer Dynamics, valued at $75 million, a gleaming Tesla Model X waiting curbside, a $13 million townhouse on the Upper East Side. Evan slid the envelope into his inner pocket. Paper whispered. Wax seal kissed fabric. He felt the square corners print through the suit as the quartet lifted toward their cadence. A notary's stamp flashed under the chandelier when he tilted it, just a flicker, gone before doubt could blink. A server passed. The tray wobbled the width of a breath. Champagne lapped the glass rims. Evan's fingers left crescents in the wood of his chair. He loosened his tie 1 notch, then set the knot back where it belonged. Across the room, Grant's mouth made a small crescent too, polite, tidy, rehearsed, aimed straight at the last table. 2 executives leaned toward Richard, whispering futures. Elaine adjusted the line of her pearl necklace and didn't look left. Applause lapped the parquet as Richard lifted his glass. He spoke of legacy, of vision, of what the name Mercer meant in boardrooms and on brass plates. He paused for the laugh lines, and the room obliged. Evan watched the ripple run the length of the hall and fold around his table like surf around a rock. He did not move. He studied timing. He counted beats between the quartet's phrases. He tapped the envelope once, twice, thumb to wax, as if checking a pulse only he could hear. Richard set the glass down and spread his hands. The company would pass to Grant, the keys already waiting, the deed already drafted. The quartet hushed, cameras lifted like a flock. Evan's jaw eased. Not yet, he told himself. Let their tide climb 1 crest higher. He breathed once, slow, ready. The envelope waited in his pocket, heavier than every toast in the room and almost ready to speak. A black walnut table ran the length of the Mercer dining room, knives aligned like soldiers. Richard Mercer lifted a flute toward Grant and said the family name as if it were a medal. Evan cleared his throat. Elaine adjusted a napkin crease that did not need fixing. Chairs gave a thin scrape. Grant described a lab prize, 3 sentences, 1 practiced shrug. That, Richard said, is what Mercers do. He looked down the long table. Evan, you passed PE. Progress. Laughter slid around the plates, sharp. Evan folded his hands and traced the wood grain with his thumb until the ridge vanished, then lifted his water without a sound. Nobody asked what he was building. The chandelier kept humming softly. Later, under the neon hum of a Jersey diner, Evan tied an apron and wiped the counter in efficient strokes. Grease left a shine hot water could break. Orders clipped to the rail. Patty melt, extra onions, fries twice, coffee refill. He stacked tips, small bills and quarters, folded once, twice, and slipped them into a wallet. His phone buzzed with a photo. Grant in a new blazer, parents bracketing him. "Don't bring fryer smell to the piano, kid," Grant typed. Evan muted the thread, reset the timer, and slid plates to booth 4. Steam lifted. At closing, he scrubbed his hands until lemon soap erased the day, or most of it. On Arthur Mercer's porch, cicadas stitched the dark. The old man patted the step beside him and pressed a brass tie clip into Evan's palm, the initials AM, shallow with years. He did not speak about earnings or exits. He asked what Evan built when nobody watched. Across the yard, a sprinkler ticked. Arthur tapped his cane twice and looked toward the hedge. "Do not mistake anyone's blindness for truth," he said. "A leader knows where to look, especially at the people others treat like wallpaper." Evan turned the clip in his fingers until the metal warmed. Arthur told him about the first shop, the first payroll, the year a banker laughed, and the year he stopped laughing. "Power is loud," he said, "but trust is the current underneath it." Boardroom afternoons came later. Grant flowed through them in tailored navy, a shadow to Richard's handshakes. Evan's name never appeared on the calendar. He carried binders and water, then waited outside the glass, the logo of Mercer Dynamics hanging over his reflection like a watermark. When the door cracked open, fragments escaped, margins, risk, leverage, then the seal closed again. He trimmed the parking lot hedge, even corners, sap stinging his wrists. Through the window, Grant pointed at a slide and smiled the smile that means a future has already been assigned. Evan returned a courier cart and stacked boxes in a column by the copier. He checked clock, checked hallway, and made sure nobody needed anything else. The meeting never needed him. Senior Spring brought banners and a catered toast. "Columbia," Elaine said, laying a boarding pass on the counter as if it were communion. "Geneva for the summer," Richard added, tapping a European itinerary. Grant posed with a suitcase and a grin. Evan opened a corrugated box at the warehouse, slid out a refurbished laptop, and wiped the shadow of an old sticker from the lid. Forklifts beeped. A foreman traced loops with a clipboard. He learned spreadsheets at midnight, headphones on, while the building settled and the soda machine clicked. All of it threaded the present. The quartet held a note and the chandeliers hummed back. The ballroom mirrored the scenes, the long sightline, the careful laugh in Richard's throat, the way Elaine smoothed a pearl strand until each bead faced forward. At the front, Grant's smile sharpened as cameras drifted into place. By the service doors, Evan pressed the tie clip against the envelope, metal to wax, a click. These are the moments people skip in quick-cut family revenge stories, the quiet calibrations and small proofs. But family drama stories are built from them. They teach timing better than any speech. He watched Grant bask in borrowed light and let the clock tick. When doors would not open, Evan used the service corridor and appeared where the lights were loudest. Cue cards pinned to corkboard. A headset whisper from stage left. At the plaza's grand ballroom, chandeliers trembled over a parquet floor polished to a mirror. Sponsor tables ringed a runway, and a white backdrop stamped Mercer Dynamics in gold. Menu cards gleamed with foil letters. A string quartet tucked a waltz beneath the talk all evening. Richard Mercer stepped into the spotlight and took the microphone. Cufflinks flashed, signatures pretending to be stars. The teleprompter inched forward. Tradition, stewardship, the Mercer name as anchor and sail. Cameras glided on gimbals, catching Elaine at frame's edge, hands neat, eyes tracking angles no one else noticed. The valuation slid in without friction. 75 million, a number shaped like inevitability. Grant drifted a step closer, firstborn posture polished to chrome, a graphic rolled, growth lines marching uphill, while the quartet climbed to meet it. Richard's palm hovered an inch over Grant's shoulder and settled, a benediction for photographers. Then the ritual everyone expected. An engraved plaque in a leather box angled to the nearest lens. A curbside video. Tesla Model X, midnight paint, doors hushed open like a promise. Applause broke in waves. A third slide drifted in. An Upper East Side townhouse, limestone bright, a caption whispering 13 million and a cross street vague enough to tease. Crystal chimed. Executive tables tipped their attention forward as if gravity lived on stage. Elaine swept an invisible thread from Grant's lapel and left her hand there long enough to land in 3 photographs. She checked the teleprompter with a blink that matched its pace. Champagne advanced in synchronized arcs, a bright tide cresting on cue. Evan watched from the lee of a column braided with lilies. The service corridor breathed cool air at his back. From there, the whole proscenium fit inside his palm. From there, he did not exist to the spotlight. He set Arthur's tie clip against the envelope, metal to wax. A quiet click felt more than heard. He counted beats between cadences, tracked the lighting desk painting Richard warm and the rest in tasteful dusk. Headsets murmured, "Stand by," and go. Bose leaned into a low note. Evan loosened his tie half a notch and set it back to center. A single thread clung to his lapel. He rolled it flat with a thumb. On the dais, Grant adjusted his cuff and let his mouth hold that tidy crescent again. These are the seams most audiences skim in family drama stories, the rigging that makes coronations float. The room loved its reflection. Applause moved in layers like wind through wheat. Evan kept to the wall and measured distance. 20 steps to the stairs, 8 to the side table, 3 to the nearest camera if it pivoted wrong. A stage manager counted down with fingers, silent and sure. Richard reached the paragraph with the word future. The quartet resolved to a bright chord. Phones lifted for the toast not yet poured. Evan slid one shoe length along the baseboard, found the edge where shadow cut the light, and matched his breath to the room's tempo. The envelope rode against bone, square and patient. He moved when the clapping swelled again. The floral column hid his first 2 steps. The curtain kept his third. He found the side table under velvet, palmed the wick of sealing wax through fabric, and felt the raised ring of a notary. A stray flare kissed the paper and moved on. Music held the hall. Words held the screens. Evan let both keep time and set the envelope on the linen, ready to open what the room believed was already settled. He found the side table by the curtain where the velvet fell like water and set the envelope on the linen. The waltz held the room in an even loop. He worked a thumb under the wax and felt the seal give with a soft click. A letter opener lay beside a silver tray. He slid its edge through paper until the seam parted cleanly. Light skated the cut. He breathed once and lowered his shoulders. Tabs waited like flags along the top sheet. Trust instrument, stock transfer agreement, property trust, addendum, escrow instructions, notarial acknowledgement. Raised seals pressed circles into the paper. Schedule A listed the shares by class and lot, line after line like marching orders. A 1-page summary lived up front in plain type, the sort of page meant to be read out loud. The architecture underneath was careful. Arthur Mercer's trust, governed under New York law, converted to irrevocable status upon satisfaction of a condition already met. Mercer Dynamics was a Delaware corporation. The stock transfers were recorded to its ledger by corporate secretary attestation. 2 independent witnesses had initialed each signature page. A Manhattan notary had stamped and signed, commission number bold as a bell. Dates sat months before tonight. A memorandum from independent counsel confirmed capacity, intent, conflict checks, delivery instructions, and escrowed duplicates. Under the packet lay a folded letter, thick paper grained like old maps. Arthur's hand moved in steady strokes. He did not flatter. He remembered a first payroll met with pawned tools and a winter when the bank smiled at the risk, then stopped smiling when the numbers led back. He wrote about how power mistakes volume for value and how a room's quiet tells the truth. He explained why one grandson would carry profit and the other would carry people, and why only the second could carry both. Evan read with a finger riding the lines like a straight edge. When he reached the activation clause, notice by delivery to the beneficiary, effective upon receipt, his chin dipped once, small and final. He touched Arthur's tie clip to the letter's margin, metal cool, then warm. The notary's seal caught a flare from the chandelier and went dull again. He paired the pile to what a room would recognize at a glance: the summary, the notarial acknowledgement, the secretary's attestation, the signature page with Arthur's full name written as if carved. He folded the rest back into the envelope, squared the edges, and tried the draw. Out, in, out, in. A rehearsal so the stage would see confidence, not fumbling. A server ghosted behind him with a rack of flutes, eyes curious for a breath, then passed. Evan shifted his stance so the curtain covered the paper, waited for the soft Doppler of trolley wheels to fade, and checked the teleprompter's drift across the way. Richard was reaching the line about gratitude. Glasses rose. Evan slid the packet into his inner pocket, pressed it flat against his ribs, and found the seam of shadow leading to the stairs. He matched the room's inhale. He checked his watch, felt the second-hand skate. Timing would carry him, not volume, not luck. When crystal touched crystal, he left the dark. The paper would do the talking. He left the curtain when crystal kissed crystal. Stairs rose under his shoes. 3 brisk steps, a breath, a fourth. The stage met him with heat. The microphone squealed, a protest, then fell quiet. Richard turned with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Sir," Richard said softly, hand half across the mic. "We're in the middle." Evan placed the envelope on the lectern and set Arthur's tie clip across the top like a small bar of brass. He looked at the room, not the cameras. "A minute," he said. "Then the room can judge." Glasses hovered, bowstrings held a note and froze it. Spotlights tightened, circling 2 Mercers and the place a third had rarely stood. Elaine angled at Grant, smoothing a seam that wasn't there. Grant's mouth sharpened. His gaze drew a line from last table to dais, as if to remind everyone where lines belonged. Richard lifted 2 fingers toward the tech booth. A stagehand reached for the fader. "Lower the house," Richard mouthed. The light dipped a hair. Security pivoted at the aisle, waiting. Evan didn't give it a chance. He lifted the summary page, squared it with 1 tap, and clipped it to the lectern with the tie clip. "You've heard about legacy," he said. "Here is the instrument that governs it." He turned the page toward the front row. Raised seal. Notary block. Corporate secretary attestation. Dates inked months before the quartet learned tonight's set list. These transfers were executed by Arthur Mercer. Effective on delivery. Delivery occurred. Phones rose like a field of pale moths. At the executive table, 2 attorneys leaned together, lips moving without sound. Grant laughed once, a dry exhale. Richard's smile found teeth. "Old drafts," he said, pitched to Carrie. "Affection, not authority." "Current," Evan said. "Irrevocable. Ledger entries signed and retained." He slid the notarial acknowledgement forward, then the secretary's page with the stock ledger references. The camera on the gimbal swung and steadied. The tie clip held fast. Elaine stepped a toe forward, heel planted, and touched Grant's sleeve like a metronome. Richard turned to the crowd. "We appreciate family enthusiasm," he said, "but tonight is for Grant's accomplishment." Evan let that line hang until the silence pushed back. Tonight is for truth. He kept his voice level, like calling orders through the diner window when the grill sizzled. "You told me to stay near the service door," he said, eyes on the room. "I did. I learned what service looks like." He pointed not with a finger but with the paper, a small pivot that made the seal catch light. "This is short. Arthur built for people first. The instruments reflect that. Shares assigned. Property placed in trust. Authority transferred on receipt. If the room wants language, it's here." He tapped the clause without reading it. A murmur rolled the length of the parquet. Security looked to Richard. Richard looked to the booth. The booth looked back to the light. Grant let his hand fall from his cuff and folded his arms, chin lifted a degree. Evan did not hurry. "I worked nights," he said. "I stocked pallets, scrubbed counters, learned balance sheets in a building that hummed when everyone slept. Leadership isn't louder, it's steadier. The trust recognizes that steadiness." Richard's voice cut in. "Enough." A laugh rode it. He meant the room to borrow his calm. "You see why we kept him out of the boardroom." "And yet," Evan said, "the boardroom is in these pages." The parquet held its breath. Somewhere a glass chimed. The quartet waited, slowly. Arthur stepped into the aisle's light. Then a cane struck wood, one decisive note from the aisle, and the crowd turned their faces as one. Cane met wood once, a single clean note. Faces pivoted. Arthur Mercer came down the aisle without hurry, the kind that doesn't ask permission. Cameras locked. The quartet held a quiet string. He stopped at the stage lip, one hand on the cane's crook, and looked from Richard to Evan to the papers pinned by a brass clip. Evan stayed at the lectern. Richard edged closer, smile set, hand half extended toward the mic, as if proximity could retake ground. Arthur wasted no syllables. "The trust is New York law," he said, voice steady. "Its condition is met. It is irrevocable. Mercer Dynamics is a Delaware corporation. The stock ledger reflects these transfers. Notarial acknowledgement is present. 2 independent witnesses initialed. The secretary attested and recorded. The dates proceed tonight by months. He lifted a page. The raised seal caught light and gave it back. I signed them, ordered delivery for tonight. That is why he stands there, not by the service doors. Richard breathed a laugh that wasn't one. My father is 81, he told the room. He is sentimental. He has been encouraged. The papers are drafts, affectionate gestures. We appreciate the theatrics, but we will continue the program. His fingers flicked toward the booth. The front wash dimmed a fraction. Security shifted their weight. Elaine rested a hand on Grant's sleeve, palm smoothing an invisible wrinkle, while her eyes tracked the director's headset. Arthur tilted his head. Independent counsel examined me 6 weeks before signing and again at execution, he said. Capacity, intent, conflict checks. The secretary cross-checked signatures and the ledger. An escrowed duplicate sits at Sullivan Ward. I built this company by listening to people others treated like wallpaper. Pride is loud. Service endures. I am not confused. I am finished being ignored in my own house. The cane touched wood once, gentle and exact. A shiver ran the executive tables. Eyes traded. One small nod, then another. A councilman adjusted his tie for the profile shot. A woman from the bond desk stood clapping. 2 rows later, it wasn't alone. Phones lowered. Elaine pinched a napkin edge into a hard line, then stepped half a pace back. Grant's fingers whitened on the glass stem. The crescent on his mouth went flat. Evan didn't claim the noise. He straightened the tie clip, set the summary a little higher on the lectern, and handed a second copy to the first row without looking away from the hall. We start with people, he said, even and spare. Then the numbers follow. No flourish. His shoulders lowered and stayed there. He scanned the faces that had never scanned him back and let stillness do what the microphone could not. Arthur inclined his head toward him. Show them. Richard's stance faltered, the practiced angle gone for a breath. A cue light shifted from amber to clear. The side door clicked shut on a pair of fast heels. The spotlight narrowed, then opened until Evan stood at its center with nothing between him and the room but paper and air. The second before the next tide hits, for all to hear. The room held still after the cane's last tap. A breath stretched across crystal, then the first clap started. One seat, then another, traveling until the spotlight fixed Evan at center. He touched Arthur's tie clip, set an anchor, and let the noise settle into a quiet that listened back. I won't keep you long, he said. You've heard documents. You've heard Arthur. Here's the part I need to add. He didn't pace. One hand stayed on the lectern. He measured words like cut lumber. I learned timing on night shifts when orders stacked and the grill wouldn't wait. I learned margins from pallets, not slides. People carry companies, not the other way around. The quartet found a low drone and left it there. So this is simple, Evan said. We put people before scorecards, not with slogans, with work you can check. He clicked a pen and marked 3 boxes on a sheet. Day 1, a culture audit with night crew interviews, tracked and published. Day 1, open office hours every Tuesday, no gatekeepers, 2 hours in person and online. Day 1, a contractor review, hotline live tonight, so we know who profits by squeezing the people who stock our parts. No layoffs to make a chart smile. Standards will rise, and we'll meet them together. At the executive tables, pens woke. A vice president underlined a line twice. A policy lead leaned toward a colleague and pointed to the number on the side screen. 2 older machinists, Arthur's Heirs, stood at the back and nodded once. Cameras edged forward and stopped. No one pushed. Richard tried a smile that belonged to another hour. He angled toward the side door. Keys clicked in his palm. Elaine stayed half-turned, fingers light on Grant's sleeve, smoothing a wrinkle that would not smooth. Grant didn't move. The stem of his glass pressed a white ring into his fingers, then lost its circle when he set it down. Grant's voice carried just enough. Enjoy the moment, he said. It shrinks. Evan didn't step away from the lectern. Stay, he answered. Work with me. Start where I started. He nodded toward the service doors. A pilot on the late shift, paired with HR and operations. 1 month? Board ratification meets next week. Council will review and record. If you want leadership, lead service. Grant's blink slowed. The executives watched them the way a tide watches piers, already moving around what will stand. Richard chose the hallway. His shoes lost volume under the quartet's thin cord. Elaine's hand lifted from Grant's sleeve and fell to her side. Arthur stepped forward and offered something small, a leather-wrapped ledger with a keycard tucked inside. No speech, just the weight of years passed from one palm to another. The host glanced at the booth. The giant screen shifted from a gala mark to the clean Mercer Dynamics logo with a quiet dissolve. A camera flash popped and died. The quartet struck a warmer chord. Evan set the ledger beside the papers and rested his hand on it, not claiming, just confirming. Mercer Dynamics belongs to the people who show up, he said. Tonight we decide what that means. A murmur moved, not gossip, but the workman's sound before tools lift. A few managers loosened their ties by a notch. Someone snapped a pen cap and placed it square beside a plate. The investors didn't clap, they wrote. It wasn't indifference. It looked like calculations making room for a new column. Grant shifted his footing by an inch. You think this is revenge, he said softly. It isn't, Evan said. But families remember. Rooms remember. In family revenge stories, people cheer the strike. We'll choose the rebuild. Arthur's cane touched wood again, almost a blessing. Outside, he told Evan. The ballroom doors opened on Fifth Avenue. A push of night air slid over the carpet, crisp and clean. Lights from the park threw a pale river onto the ceiling. Evan looked toward the street, then back to the room that had finally decided to see him. He lifted the ledger. The music eased to an end, the promise asked for cold air to set its seal, and the city listened back beneath spring sky. The ballroom doors folded to Fifth Avenue, letting night pour in. Cool air lifted the edge of the carpet and washed the perfume from the room. Central Park lights made a pale river on the ceiling. Evan and Arthur paused on the steps, shoulders level, breath settling to the city's tempo. A yellow cab hissed past, taillights streaking the brass. Arthur set a leather ledger and a keycard in Evan's hand. No speech. A nod. A small weight transferred. The cane tapped once. Period, not flourish. Evan slid the keycard into his wallet and tucked the ledger under his arm. He faced the street. He took out his phone. HR lead, he said, voice low. Office hours. Tuesdays, 2 to 4, in person and online. Start this week. Another call. Contractor hotline, live tonight, record, route, protect. An email followed. Board, materials attached. He checked his watch. Morning had a shape now, not a guess. Arthur stepped back half a pace and let the younger man fill the doorway. The tie clip on Evan's lapel caught a stray street lamp and went dark again. Lemon soap from 1,000 closings seemed to lift from his skin. He remembered forklifts drawing their slow arcs and the way a warehouse calms after the last beep. He touched the ledger's spine with his thumb, then the brass clip. Shoulders stayed straight, wrists loose. A bus sighed at the curb. Across the avenue, the park breathed. Being underestimated had not written his future. Quiet discipline had. Rooms could be loud. People made them worth hearing. He looked over his shoulder once, not back, just to mark the distance. Subscribe to Crimson Heirs for sharp human family revenge stories and layered family drama stories. Share and comment the moment that hit you most. Monday, the boardroom doors will open.